All right, another shout out to my facilities friends and facilities professionals. This is another one of our NACFM pro tips, and today what I want to talk to you about is extension cords. And so in the facilities realm, we use extension cords a lot, and you know fire marshals do not like these things. But we need them necessary to operate equipment very often. And so a couple things I want to talk about is how we roll up extension cords for long-time use or lifetime use and proper operation, and also wire gauge and why that's so important. So a couple things. First off, I'm demonstrating the proper way to roll up an extension cord, and I always like to start with the end that I plug into the wall. And so here we have the male end of the cord, and I start to lay this in my hand, and some people call this the over-under method. And so for the next loop, and I make a loop the same size, I roll it on top of my wrist, and I'm going under and handing it to myself in the same direction. So on this one, I go over my hand, and here I go under, and I put it over top of my wrist, and make my loops the same. And this is very important. And what's actually happening is I'm forming a figure 8. So underneath my thumb there, you see I've created a figure 8. And the figure 8 is just hidden inside what they call the over-under method. And in this case, if I continue the over-under method, the figure 8 prevents the cord from getting crossed over and in a knot. And the advantage of starting this way and continuing this method is that now I can take my Velcro and bundle this up. And then when I'm ready to use it, I grab this end that I'm going to plug into the wall, and I face away from me the direction I want to toss my wire. And when I toss my wire out, the figure 8 prevents my wire from getting in any knots. And then when I'm finished working, I go back the same way. And you'll see sound men, audio engineers, this is very common for them. And part of the reason is that inside this cord is stranded wire. And when stranded wire is made, it comes off in a manufacturing, it has a certain lay to it. And so we want to stay with the original lay of the stranded wire, or we begin to break the strands of the strand inside. Now, many of you have probably seen this method where I grab this and I start going over my shoulder like this. You see guys doing this like, this is the manly way, and look how fast I'm going. Well, the problem with this method is when I get done, I go to pull this wire out, I start to create what you see as like a little pigtail. And that pigtail puts a little curve in the wire. And a demonstration of what that begins to look like over time is this right here, and we get what looks like the end of a pig's tail. And this begins to put a lot of stress on the wire. You get wear points on the wire. It catches on the wall when you're vacuuming down the hallway. Very poor use of putting your extension cord away. Another advantage of this is the larger and heavier the cord is, the more easier it is to maintain this in a bucket and keep this stationary here, at least on campus. And I know that this is just a recommendation for you. What you'll see the most of, and when gentlemen use the over-under, is mostly with microphone wires. And showing you a microphone or a DMX cable that we'll see a lot in facilities, the wire gauge typically in here is 24 gauge or 22 gauge. And you'll read a wire, all wire that you read will have a wire gauge on it or American wire gauge. Even extension cords, like the one that we have today, has an American wire gauge on it. And the American wire gauge of this orange cord would look really robust and strong, and we could probably hook up some large equipment to. This wire gauge is actually only 16 AWG, or American wire gauge. And the importance of knowing that is if I use this extension cord on a piece of equipment that draws 11 amps, I'm dropping the voltage and drawing even more current so that the motor has to work even harder. So if I'm going to add an extension cord to an existing piece of equipment, I would go up in wire size, which is a lower number in American wire gauge. And so for instance, this black wire here is a 12 gauge wire, whereas this is a 16 gauge wire. I have a 14 gauge, and this would be a 22 or 24 gauge. So I'll show you some close-ups. If you like this video, comment or let us know what you think below. Thank you guys.